الحكيم على سيدنا محمد. And so all of she addressed all of you. I all beloved ones in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu bring you to life, right, in with knowledge from Himself. We have taken the from the previous lesson, the beginning of the book. There's a book, the beginning of the path, the connection or the bond between the slave of the King of Kings, right? Our connection with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, right? So the connection between the Creator and the creation. Right? And we spoke about the reason, right, why Habib Al Adani wrote this book, right? The Ba'is. The Ba'is is like what was the triggering, what was the trigger, or what pushed him into writing this. And there was these questions from people, right, who came for dawras, and they asked him to write, a book on tarbiyah, a book on suluk, a book on on character and purification from people of the past, scholars of the past, right, and linking it to issues of today. Right, so now we have taken also what the scholars have written, from the previous from previous scholars like Imam Al Ghazali, Imam Al Haddad, right? Books on suluk, right? Suluk means basically traversing to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, or taking the path to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Right, so for us to take the path of what will be a traditional path, right, that began with Nabi Adam alayhi salam, right, all the way through the prophets and the righteous till our time today. Nam. Right. So for us to be firm, to take the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does it mean? It means to be firm and straight, right, on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Istaqimu," right? Be firm and be straight, right, on the path, and do not be crooked, on this path, right? Be straight, right, on this path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, straight, right, straight on the path. Now, right, so we're on the path of, whereby the Quran has drawn out for us, and the path that the Prophet ﷺ has explained for us. And what is our way? What is our path? What is, and we want to make it easy for us, for people to take this path, and not make it hard on people. No. Right, but so we know that righteousness is really wide and deep, right? And so therefore we take this path to the level of what we are able to do, right? And the word istiqamah, right, to be firm and straight on the path of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. It is for us to be consistent, on the commandments of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, in performing them, and staying away from the forbidden, from the prohibitions of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and staying away from them, as Allah says in Surah Shams, right? That Allah swears by the nafs, right? And Allah inspires in it its righteous and its evil, and therefore He is stop. Mhm. Okay, now I'm hearing again. Okay, right. Okay, so I'm taking this path, right, on commanding to goodness, and for be pure on the words that you say, right? Yes, it's my connection. Sorry, my connection is. So if you see me stop speaking, right, it means I can't hear Ustazah, which means my connection is not smooth. Okay, just allow what and just wait for me to come back. Okay. Um. mm, mm. Right. So we begin on the path to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. We begin first, right, with the individual. The individual, commanding doing what Allah has commanded, and staying away from what Allah has prohibited. Right. And then so now after the individual itself, to do around him, right, and extending to the children, like the family. Right? So for a father, I would say to the student, to his to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded, right? And to stay away from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited, right? and we see, all kinds of, we see in our day to day, different societies, different communities, right, in this world, right, people who have cut off from their parents, they've cut off from their siblings, they've cut off even from their children, and we try our very best to invite, to advise them, right, that it is important for us, in societies, right, to keep the bonds of family, because it is one of the core ways in which the religion is established, right, in commanding what is good and forbidding what is evil. Mm. Right, and now, right, so how can we, right, so when we speak about in the beginning, the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the you know, uh, and right, so uquq will be to stay away, to be disobedient, right? To be detestful, right? To be hateful, right? To be rude, right? Towards one's parents, right? So in Islam, that it is something that is really core, right? Core in the path to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, right? And core also in Islam, which is to command to goodness and to forbid evil. Mm, mm. Right, so for us, and then we extend to other things, right, about, like, for example, our clothing, right, so there are many parts, with regards to the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are many aspects, right? So when we speak about clothing, you speak about clothing, for a woman, right, to cover up herself, right, by the laws of the religion, right, that's the ma'ruf, right, that's a good thing, right, that is something that should be commanded. And then a person wearing something that is, exposing her aura, right, that is munkar, that is something that is against the religion, and to advise them, against it. Right. So here we see, that there are many, many examples, of commanding to goodness and forbidding evil. So it's something that is really core in our religion. And it's something that will stand till the day of judgment. Right. That Allah will call us to do this, right? To call to goodness and to forbid what is evil. Right. And then another example will be the language, right? Pure and good language. To use good language onto each other, that is commanding to goodness, and to advise people on purifying, right, the way they speak, right. And what is forbidden, right, is using all this foul language and curses, things that you see in the media, right, that will be, munkar, that will be evil things, and it should be forbidden, and it should be stopped in the household, stopped in families, right. And then we have also, other examples of commanding to goodness and forbidding evil. So this the many examples, right? So even if we're relationship with each other, in our relations with each other, right? So subhanallah, to teach our children first and foremost, right, in our family, like, teach them, what is righteous, and then to stop them or to forbid them from what is wrong, and it is something that is core, and we spoke about it like the previous lesson. mm. So now we're going to enter into our lesson today. This was a revision, okay, of what we took last week, right? So when we speak about amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar, right? Right. So when we command to goodness, and when we apply it in our own lives, and we forbid what is wrong, and we apply that in our lives, this is one of the very fast ways to get to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. It's one of the ways to get on the path to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Right. And so um now, right, and so the scholars, right, to really define this for us. How do you obey Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, and how do you stay from disobedience? Right, the scholars, they define this by around four enemies of the human being. And so Habib, he's going to chapter Al-A'da al-Arba, the book, the Arabic book. We're on page 11. Right. So Habib says, right, so the Quran has spoken to us and about the four enemies of Islam, right? Four enemies of the four enemies of the human being, right? In the Hadith, right? In the Sunnah, right? The human being has four enemies, that they must know who these enemies are, right? The danger from these enemies, the evil from these enemies, right? The effect of these enemies, and the influence of these enemies. And he says here, right, Iblis and the dunya and the nafs and the hawa, right? And how do we free ourselves, right, from these enemies? And Habib Ali bin Muhammad al-Habshi, Habib Ali al-Habshi, right? He has and so we will now explain to you, Habib says in the book, we'll now explain to you, by the permission of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, how do we free ourselves from this enemy, right? And so he speaks. So in the poetry of Habib Ali al-Habshi, he says, and so guard over your heart, got over your heart, like from the blame of shaitan and nafs and the hawa and the dunya. And we're going to explain each and every one of them. All right. And so, right. So these enemies, right, they encompass a human being. They surround a human being like an enemy, right? And of them, so of them, what's Hmm. Let me sketch it. Sorry, my internet broke off. Um, Let me just continue, okay? From where she left off. Okay, right. So the enemies of a human being, eh? So the enemies that will encompass a human being. I'm not sure, right? So I think enemies that encompass a human being, right? Enemies that mix with the human being, goes inside the human being, enemies that argue with the human being, enemies that ride on a human being, I mean enemies that get into the understanding of the human being, right? Enemies that get into the minds of human beings, right? And so the one that encompasses a human being and really can influence a human being, and these are the enemies that are the most dangerous kind, right? Onto the human being. Right. So we speak about about shaitan first. Number one is shaitan, right? And he is. I'm trying to catch up how about Izuzaza. Okay, I'm going to go very quickly, right? So he's mentioned yes. So she went through shaitan already. So shaitan is he is the first and original enemy of the human being, right? And that is from the very beginning, whereby shaitan vowed animosity with the human being from the time of Nabi Adam alayhi salam, whereby he is all out every single day throughout the day, right, to bring human being right to destruction and to the hellfire. Question number two right now, eh? So dunya. Right. So dunya, right, and that is, dunya refers to the desires of a human being, right? The physical desires of the human being of wanting to eat, of marriage, of drinking and of relaxation, it's all parts of hadi dunya, wealth, luxury. So dunya, as Habib mentioned here, so is basically the desires specifically on what is physical, right? Desires specifically on what is physical. Now, see my internet cut off again. Bismillah, Bismillah. Okay, if you cannot hear, yeah, I cannot hear, which means my internet's cut off. Okay, now it come back on. Okay, now, Allahumma salli Muhammad. Now, now, right. So this physical desires, it is something that human beings need, and we do need it because we need to survive in this world, right? So if you have no desires, you won't want to go and survive. You want to go and procreate. You won't want to go and eat and drink, right? You actually need your desires. You do need it to survive. Mm. Right. So but in the hadith, right, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, the dunya mal'una, the dunya is cursed. He said it three times. He said it three times, a dunya mal'una, mal'una, mal'una. The dunya is cursed. It is cursed. It is cursed. Except the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so except the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then in another hadith, Rasulullah Sallam said that this dunya, from the moment Allah created this dunya, Allah didn't even look at it. I mean, it is something so despised to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu and Rasulullah who said that this is dunya, if it were to weigh in value, Okay, so sorry, my internet this today is really not not cooperating. May dua, okay, may dua for me, inshallah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, speaks about the khutuwat of shaitan. He speaks about the steps of shaitan and the steps of shaitan. So shaitan, when he wants to, bring the human beings astray, and when he wants to bring the human being astray, right? He will begin, with steps. He won't start with shaitan will not come to me and he will not say to me, stop remembering Allah or stop praying. He won't come to you directly and say to you, stop doing this, stop doing that. No, he will not do that. Right? He has his khutuwat, right? He has his steps, right? Right. So he will first bother the human being with some thoughts. Mm, mm, mm. Right. So for example, if someone begins to sing La ilaha illallah. So shaitan comes to you and makes you think. He bothers you in your mind, and he says to you, why are you doing la ilaha illallah for? Why are you doing la ilaha illallah? You should be doing slawats. Go and do slawats. And then you're sitting there, you're being bothered by all these thoughts, and you're still doing your dhikr, but you are not tasting it and you're not focused on it. But it's so shaitan's like making you wonder about all kinds of things, right? And he's making you, not focus in your dhikr. This is how he does. Right. And then suddenly when you're thinking about all these things, you think, okay, I should stop doing la ilaha illallah. I'm going to do salawat unto Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you begin doing salawats. Then he will go and say, you know what, why are you doing salawats? Do astaghfirullah. You know what? Go and do astaghfirullah. Right? Because you have a lot of sins, right? You do astaghfirullah is better, right? Instead of doing salawats. So you get occupied by these thoughts while you're doing salawats and you're not focus on it. When you get occupied and then you go to astaghfirullah. And then afterwards, I was like, why are you bothering yourself doing astaghfirullah? You read the Quran. Why are you doing your zikr? So he's never ending until he makes you tired of it and you stop doing it. Right? That's his game. His game. He's gonna go and his whispers. No. Right. So we're back to shaitan. Okay, talking about shaitan. Right. So I'm not sure what happened in between because my I got off. Right. But inshallah, in the middle, inshallah, the internet is smooth. Mm. Right. So the story of Shaitan and Nabi Adam alayhi salam. This is a very important story for us to understand and to teach this story to our children. It's a very core story. Mm. Right. So, and the story is that the Nabi Adam, alayhi salam, the story in the Quran is a well known story, but it's a very important story to understand deeply, right? So, the story of Nabi Adam and Shaitan, this is the original enemy, right? The original enemy, and the original animosity, right, towards a human being. It is the original story. It is a path of good and evil, right? So, to Shaitan, he goes to Nabi Adam alayhi salam after he has refused to bow to Nabi, to do sujood to Nabi Adam alayhi salam, and Nabi Adam was told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is shaitan, he is your enemy. And shaitan has vowed, right, to drag every human being to the hellfire. Right. So now shaitan, he goes to Nabi Adam alayhi salam and he's playing with the nafs of Nabi Adam alayhi salam. And he says to Nabi Adam, what do you think? What do you think, about living forever like the angels? Wouldn't you like that? Wouldn't you like that? The tree that is forbidden, that tree that is going to give you, right, eternity like the angels, right? So shaitan, he played on the right. So okay. um, uh, right. So shaitan, he works very closely. I'm gonna catch up, okay? Shaitan, he works very closely, right, with the dunya. Like he uses the dunya, right, plays with the insecurities of the human being, right, to attract the human being to uses he's sending his the dunya. Right. So then we are going to the nafs. The nafs. It is a natural, inclination in human being, right? Mm. Right. So the nafs, it is the core or the center of the shahawat, of the desire of the human being. Right. So and this nerves can be trained. It can be trained. It can be trained. It is naturally on evil. It's naturally on bad deeds, but it can be trained on good deeds. All right. It can be trained on good deeds. Mm. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Mm. So human being, the nerves is like this is in the Buddha. This is in the Buddha. The line is in the Buddha, right? So in the Buddha, Imam Busiri said the nerves is like a human being. Sorry, Afwan, the nafs is like the child, Afwan. The nafs is like the child. Right? If you leave it on its on suckling, it will remain suckling. It will never stop from the breast, right? But if you wean it, it's gonna be weaned. Right? So the nafs is all about training. It's all about training. Mm. And there was once this companions were coming back from jihad, and the Rasul said that we have come from a smaller jihad, right, to a bigger jihad. And they said, Ya Rasulullah, right, we came from a jihad where we were fighting with our swords and fighting on battlefield. What is a bigger jihad than this? What is a bigger jihad? And he said, it is jihad of the nafs, right? Fighting against your own nafs. That is more difficult. It's more difficult on a human being than going out into battlefield, and fighting. Mm, mm. Right. So Nam. Right. So the nerves, the whole thing about the nerves, the key to this nerves, right, is to train it. To train it, right, to place it on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nam. So the nerves, and then now this is why we learn in Islam that the nerves has levels. Right? Levels of, a nerve that commands to evil, right? Nerves that is blameworthy, that is always blaming itself, the nerves that is mutmainah, the nerves that is in tranquility with the laws of Islam, the nafs that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and well pleased, the nafs that is complete and perfect, right? So the nafs can go up in levels, right, in superiority, right, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mm. Right. So thus now comes the question, how do I make my nerves? How do I train my nerves? Right. To be upright, right, and to be, straight on the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to be consistent with the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and staying away from the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the fourth enemy here that we're going to go into, the fourth enemy is Hawa. Right. So Hawa. So here, Hawa, it is an inward strength, right, that is in the human being, right. It is linked to some natural inclination of the human being. Right, that's called hawa. Okay, there's a difference between nafs and hawa. Nafs is desires that every human being has. Hawa, different human beings have different inclinations. It will be using these are inclinations, right? That drive the human being, right? So it's a strength, right? It is strength, but it's not physical. It's not physical. You can't sense it from your five senses, right? But it's strength that so it's a strength that pushes a human being, right? When they are in stressful conditions, something that pushes them, right? It pushes them to what they are inclined towards. Mm. Something that is natural, right, inside of you. Mm. Right. So for example, if I want to go to a place, I walk there with my feet, right? With my legs. Mm. But if I want to gain something, right? So if I want to take something from that place, I will prepare myself on the inward, right? I will strive against myself, or I will prepare myself on the inward. Uh, right. So here is something that is in a human being, right? That pushes you, right, in situations of stress, right? Is in that way. Mm, mm. Right. So like for example, when something like a calamity happens, and sometimes human beings they do things that they would never imagine themselves doing, and they will think about it, and they would think to themselves, how did I do this? How did I, or how was I able to do that? How was I able to carry those things? How was I able to withstand all of that? That is something that is like an inner strength in a human being. So Allah mentions about the hawa, and this is the hawa of the human being. Mm. And look at the words of the Prophet ﷺ who has taught us exactly what is this hawa. There's positive side and there's a negative side of the hawa. It's not all negative. Right? And nafs and the hawa can be positive, can be negative. So Rasulullah said that none of you truly believe until his hawa, right, is in line with what I have come with. Right. So Rasulullah he mentioned about the hawa with regards to the iman of a person, which tells you that hawa can be a positive thing. It can be used for good. Like how the nafs can also be used for good. Like shaitan in dunya is always evil. It is always evil, right? But the hawa and nafs, it can be trained, right? And can be placed, the drive. You see the how you can say the drive of a human being, right? You can say that the drive of a human being drives you to do what you do, right? So, uh, in a hadith of Rasulullah, he said that when, to the end of time, when you see extreme miserliness being obeyed, extreme is the hadith, okay? If you when you see, extreme miserliness being obeyed, and and a human's hawa being obeyed, right? So hawa here refers to hawa that is not on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So their drive being obeyed, right? Whatever they desire, their drive, the hawa being obeyed, the inclinations being obeyed. Mm. So I'm using the word inclinations and drive for hawa. Okay. Mm. Right. So if someone so on one hadith we took just now, right, that someone does not truly believe until his hawa is in line with what the Prophet some has come with, right? The other hadith that to the end of time, Rasul said that when you see like extreme miserliness being obeyed, and when you see drive being followed, right? They just follow their hawa, right? And you see everyone being mm, and the dunya being preferred over akhirah. There are some say that if you see these three things happen, right? In fact, there was a fourth one also, that you see every person amazed by their own opinions. Then Rasul said, then on you to stick to yourself and those who are close to you. Don't mix with society, but stick to yourself and those who are close to you, right? And focus on them, and to teach them and to influence them and to bring them on the path to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. So Rasul said again, the hadith here. So if you see extreme miserliness being obeyed and hawa being followed, right, and the dunya being preferred, right, they're preferring dunya of akhirah, they will throw it away their deen, their religion, right, just for some sake of dunya. So when you see this, then for you, in the Rasul said, it is on you to keep to yourself and to those who are close to you. Keep to yourself and those who are close to you. Right. So there's the advice of the Prophet. When you see this happen. Right. So we are seeing this right now in our Zaman. And we're seeing people being so extremely, miserly, so stingy in this Zaman, and obedient to just stinginess, right? That holding on this dunya, right? And you can see people following their urges. Okay, hawa can also mean urge. Okay, so hawa can mean urge, can mean drive, can mean um uh so I mean inclinations, right? Urges. People just following their urges. Whatever they're urged to do, whatever they feel like doing, they just follow it. So this is the chapter, on the four enemies, right, of the human being. And these are the four enemies that prevent a human being from reaching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We want solution. I want solution. How do we face these enemies of ours? Right. So Habib he mentioned, about 10 points on how do we handle these enemies. Right. So the next chapter was muwajaha al-a'da al-arba'a. Right. So ways in which we can face these four enemies. Right. So the first one he mentioned, right, al-iman bil qada wal qadar. So here, this is the third rukun of the four rukuns of Islam, right, which is iman. Sorry, this is the fourth rukun. This is the fifth rukun of the six rukuns of iman. This is the fifth rukun of afwan, sixth rukun. Sila. This is the sixth rukun of the six rukuns of iman. Sorry, right. So to believe in the qada and the qadar. Right. So what is qada and what is qadar? Right. So qada, right, is what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala um has 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 uh has decreed, and the qadar is Allah's apportioning. Right. So all in the creation, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala knows it, and Allah has written about it in the Lawh al Mahfuz, the preserved tablet, and the qudra. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created in the creation, from the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from his wisdom, from his knowledge subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right. So the first way, right, to handle these four enemies, interestingly enough, right, is having belief in the qada and the qadar. Right, subhanallah. Right, so you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded, or he has determined, he has destined everything, right, based on a human being to put in effort. To put in effort. There was a man in the story about Habib. There was a righteous person, right, who was always worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it was written on his forehead, wretched, 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 right? And so some of the angels had seen it on his face, and they see this person is always worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, always obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it was written on his face, on his forehead, that he is shaqi, shaqi meaning wretched, wretched in the hellfire, wretched, wretched, wretched on his forehead. So some of the angels, they came in the form of a human being and came to this person and said to him, oh person, do you know that it is written on your forehead that you are wretched, wretched, wretched? You're doomed to the hellfire. So why do you worship Allah? And why do you obey Allah if you're doomed to burn in the hellfire? And the man said, my ending is up to Allah. Right? I am created to worship, and I will worship Him regardless of my ending. Right? And the angels, they were amazed, and they left and they went back to the Lahul Mahfuz, and they saw that the man has been changed from wretched, wretched, wretched to blissful, blissful, blissful. Blissful meaning sa'id, meaning that they entered into he will enter into paradise. Mashallah. Mm, so now the story of Nabi Lut alayhi salam. Right. So it's again the story of Nabi Ibrahim, right, and the angels that come to the angels that come to Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, then informed him, right, that they're going to go and destroy the people of Lut. And Allah says to Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, this is from the commandment of Allah and the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right. Mm. Right. So in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah says in the Quran that Allah has commanded and determined on the Bani Israel, right, that they will be, banished on the earth twice, or they will do fasad, they will do corruption on the earth twice, on the Bani Israel. So it has been decreed this will happen. Mm, right. So, right, so the belief in the decree, right, and the apportioning of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, is the first path, right, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, because so it will stop you from having all these whispers from shaitan. Why is this happening? Is that happening? Why is my life like this? Why is this, why is it not unfair? And then that, when you don't have full belief in the decree, right, and the portioning of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the determination of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, then you have all these things that will bother you, and distractions will come to you. They will prevent you from getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and taking the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the first point, okay? Right. The second point is belief, right, in matters that have been determined, right, from before you come into this earth, and matters that will end the world. Right. So knowledge that they began the world, and knowledge that end the world. Right. Similar to the first point, right, but sure explain the difference. Mm. Mm. Right. So there are two types of knowledges. Right. Two types of knowledges. Knowledges that is specific to the creation, and knowledges that is specific to the creator. Right. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right. So Allah's knowledge, right, nobody can reach it, and nobody can reach Allah's knowledge. Mm. So the word sawabiq here, right? It refers to creation. So it refers to knowledge that is that has been given to human beings, right? About what has happened, from the beginning of creation. Now, right. So upon ilm sawabiq means knowledge from the beginning of the creation, or even before that, right? So you have knowledge that Allah has, only Allah has, and nobody has this knowledge, right, of pre-eternity. Okay, you're going to Aqidah, okay, right? And then then the human being has been given some information about this knowledge that was about things that happened before his coming onto this earth. And an example is the hadith, right? So Allah does inform the human being about things that happened, to the human being from before, right? So one of the examples is the hadith of the creation of man, right? When he was in his mother's womb, right? After 4 months, the angel comes, the angel comes to the human being and writes down 4 matters, and of the matters that's written down, right, is how he will end his life, whether he will be righteous or he will be wretched, or whether he will be blissful. Then we think, why do we make dua for a good ending if it has all been written? Mm. No. But this was actually the same question that was asked, that was posed to Rasulullah in his zaman. Mm. Mm. This story, Tama, I know the story. So this man, his name is Rijal. His name is Rijal. I think I story about the story one of my classes, right? Allah. So there was once Rasulullah came to the masjid in Medina, and there was a gathering of companions. And Sayyidina Abu Hurairah is the one who narrates the story, right? So Sayyidina Nabi Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he came into this masjid, and his face changed, his face became pale. And he said that there is someone here in this gathering that his molar teeth is the size of the mountain of Uhud in the hellfire. Right? So meaning that he's one of the most destroyed people in the hellfire. And people heard this hadith from Rasulullah Islam. And this is to show, the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay? Right. So time passed, and one by one, the companions of that gathering, they passed away in a very beautiful way. They passed away in jihad, they passed away in a good ending, and this particular man whose name is Rijal, his name is Rijal, his name is Rijal, right? He was one of the most worshipful of servants, of the Muslims. He was praying all night, fasting all day, his Quran, like he was really, really righteous individual. So now I'm getting very nervous about this, because everyone in the gathering, because for example said somebody here, his molar teeth is in the hellfire, meaning his entire body is in the hellfire, is how they speak in Arabic, right? So Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, he's so worried now, right now. Like now everyone has passed away except him and this guy Rijal. And Sayyidina Abu Hurairah is getting very, very nervous, very anxious about this, because look at Rijal, look at him. He's so righteous, he's so obedient, he's so worshipful, right? He's such a great person, and Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, right? He was convinced that it's him who's going to be in the hellfire, because it can't be Rijal. Like, Rijal is such a great, Muslim from the way he looks. Oh, but the story goes that, when Musaylima, the liar, the one who claimed to be a prophet, manifested, manifested. Sayyidina Abu Bakr sent Rijal with a letter to Musaylima, the liar, right, to call him back to Islam, and to abandon his ways and lies that he is a prophet. Right. So Rijal went to Musaylima, the liar. Allah, see, and this is what happened when Rijal went to Musaylima the liar. Musaylima could see that Rijal, he's a poor person, and he's tempted by dunya, right? And so Musaylima said, Rijal, tell you what, you join my ranks and you announce to people that I am a prophet, and I'll give you half of my kingdom. I'll give you half of my wealth. And Rijal, right? Rijal, his name is Rijal, right? Rijal, like he was influenced by this, right? He was influenced by this, right? And he agreed with Musaylima the liar, and he apostated. He actually apostated. So you see, this is Ustaz is mentioning the story because of the hadith of Rasulullah, that someone could be doing the deeds of the people of paradise, right, until they suddenly bring them in paradise except for a handspan, and the decree overtakes them, and they do one deed of the hellfire, right, and they enter into it. And the story of Rijal is an example of this story, right? So he actually apostated, he entered the ranks of Musaylima the liar, right, and he died in that way. And Abu Hurairah, he was relieved when this happened. He was really relieved. It was not him, because he knew the words of Rasul was going to be true. One of them in the gathering is going to be in a hellfire. And it's not him. Abu Hurairah thought it was going to be him, right? But it was clear it was Rijal. Yani. Mm, mm, right. And then Um, and then even the story of the two brothers, right? Whereby one brother was living on the top deck, and the other brothers living on the bottom deck. And the one on the top deck, right, he was always worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the one on the bottom deck, he was drinking alcohol, wasting his time, he was doing all kinds of sins. right? And then one day, the one in the top deck said to himself, and I'm bored of worshiping. I want to see what my brother's doing. I want to do what he's doing, and he ran down the stairs. And the one at the bottom deck said to himself, you know what? I should repent. It's high time I should repent. I have to change my ways. I need to go to my brother upstairs and then ask him to show me how do I take the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So at the same time, they ran up. So one ran stairs, the other ran up the stairs, right? And they collided. They collided and they fell down the stairs and they both died at that point. They both died. Mm, mm, mm. Right. And so you see, at the point when they fell down the stairs, they both passed away. They both actually died from that fall. Right. And the angels came, the angels of mercy and the angel of punishment came. Ah, ya Allah. And they found that the one who had spent his life in worship but had a desire for sin, right? He is of the people to be punished. And the one who had spent his life on sin but had repented at the point of death, he had repented, and he had desire for worship. Because you don't know the reality of people's inward. On the outward, they might seem something, on the inward is something else, and only Allah is a judge. Right? And he ended up being of someone who received the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so only Allah knows this, and Allah only knows this. Right? So this is the belief in matters that have been they come from before and the end of people's affairs. Try to understand this. So we should understand this second point, right? Makes us, keep us on our toes, right? So you don't be complacent about your iman. You don't be complacent about worshiping. Don't be complacent. Right, right. So then and then again, shaitan tries to make us doubt this. Shaitan plays with our mind to make us doubt the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So shaitan actually bothers us, right, with this. So the third point here, right, is to keep to the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? To the commandments of the Sharia. Right. Mm, mm. Mm. Right. So, for example, I'm holding on to your wirid, your awrat, your dhikr every single day. I'm doing an amount of dhikr every single day. That is important because that keeps you on obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mm, mm. I said how the scholars have arranged for us, our timing, our time in the day, what do we recite after subuh, after dhuhr, after asr, all of these things really put us on the path and encourage us on acts of obedience. Just keeping to a formulation and amount of dhikr every day, right? It actually helps you stay on the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And Habib Omar has written the Khulasa, Imam al-Haddad has written al-Latif for us, right? Or compile the period for us. You know, Imam al-Attas, Imam al-Haddad, right? Ratib al-Haddad. And so writers, they have put together formulations of dhikr and then dua as well, right? So dua, it is the core of worship. Right, and so dua is always required. Dua is always, always required by the human being to get into prayer and to dua in desperation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And so with dua, in all the time, right? So you do a dua of the mother of Sayyidah Maryam, Hanna. Her name was Hanna, right? So how she would make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about for her child. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how Nabi Zakaria made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah answered his dua in his old age. He had a child, right? So Allah, and so when you make your dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you don't have any doubt in yourself at all. So dua is one of the very strong, connections between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and one of the very strong ways to fight the four enemies that we mentioned from before. Now, mm, mm, and then number four is to stay away from what Allah has prohibited. You know, um, uh, Mm. And to pay attention to your companions, who take as companions, because the companion he drags in this word is a statement in Arabic. The one who sits with a group of people, they become like those people. Right. So pay attention to your companions. In the Quran, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala said, right, that on the day of judgment, right, there will be people who will complain, and they'll try to free themselves of their companions, and they say, "Had I only not taken you as my companion, had I only not followed, had I only not followed you when you what you said." Right, on the day of judgment, people will be in full regret, right? Subhanallah. Mm, mm. And so now we have all this social media and technology, and we're connecting with more and more people, right? So, and sometimes, alhamdulillah, we connect on goodness, but sometimes we are connecting on evil. There could be backbiting in our messages. There could be spreading of pictures about people, and laughing at them, mocking them, right? There could be all kinds of things that is really, makes no sense, right? Or haram things being spread using our technology, right? To do what Allah dislikes, subhanallah, right? And so your companions, not now in this time, this zaman, is not just limited to those who are physically around you, but your companions are those whom you're connected with online. Mm. Nah. Now, right? So here, the Prophet ﷺ has informed us or commanded us to keep good companionship, right? And the Rasul had likened good companionship, right, to the seller of perfume, right? So and he had likened bad companionship to a blacksmith, right? So a blacksmith. So if you see with someone's perfume, right, either he gives you some perfume, right, or you enjoy the perfume, and or when you leave the place, you smell of perfume. So it's all beneficial to see people of righteousness. But when you see with someone who is a blacksmith, like you will smell like smoke, you will leave the place, your clothing might be burned, right? So but still people who are bad company or bad influence, it is always, bad on you. Nah. Mm. And then so to guard over your time, right? Oh, Suzaji went through very quickly. Right. So for you to use your time well. Right? So the time before Fajr is a time of rahmah, time of rahmah, right? To seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, be awake in this time before Fajr, right? And stay awake. Right? So to have to arrange your timing, to have a timetable, Uh, um, Mm. Right. So even if you want to go, you see in Islam, right? You can go for holidays, you can go for relaxation. Right. It's okay. You can go to the beach. You can go, to places, right? But if you intend, right, good intentions, it's not going to be a waste of time, right? So, but arrange your time well, so you don't end up wasting your time doing things that is against Allah Subhanahu wa Taala and against the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? So that's number 10. So we went to number 10 actually. She went very quickly. So number 3, it is to do what Allah has commanded. Number 4, stay away from what Allah has prohibited. Number 5, to do it to seek protection from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala against shaitan. Number 6, it is to protect yourself with your by the wirid, by adhkar and your wirid. Number 7 is dua. Number 8, it is to stay away from bad companions, right? Number 9, right, it is to stop yourself, right, from taking, taking technology or means, right, of heedlessness, inshallah. And number 10 is to organize your time. And number 11, right, is to connect yourself to a sheikh who can guide you on the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She went to very quickly all 10. Mashallah. So now she wants to take questions. So can you bring me out of the translation? She look at the video to me, inshallah. I'll translate, inshallah. Can someone bring me out of translation? Reggie, is she there? Okay, bismillah. Mashallah, jazakallah khair, Ustadha. Inshallah, we will take questions. 10 actually. I think I didn't realize she was going down on this, but we went through all 10. She went through all 10. That's 11 upon 11. Show the questions from the last week. Whoever sharing screen. Yeah, showing the questions from last week. or if anyone has questions from today, but put your questions to public, okay? Don't send them directly to me. Okay. Can you show me the questions from last week? Right. تمام. أستاذة يعني سؤال هنا. mm, تمام. Okay, inshallah. So she said that you can take your knowledge from your asatiza, right, around you, but that is knowledge. That is not taking the path. You're taking knowledge from these people, right? But to connect yourself to a sheikh, there are mashaykh, zaman there are, right? And to connect yourself to them in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there is also a hadith that says that towards the end of time when there is really want to bring people on the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no sheikh, right? Then take the salawat onto Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as your way, right? It will be your sheikh for you. Like to do salawas in abundance will be your sheikh for you. تمام. السؤال الثاني. نعم. So she just read today, mashallah, just read today words from Habib Muhammad al-Haddar. Habib Muhammad al-Haddar is Habib Omar Sheikh and also Habib Anwar's father, right? So it just read today, right, about how, a woman rises in her levels with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by her patience with her husband. And the example that was given is Asiya, the wife of Firaun, and how she rise, to the very high level of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by her patience on her, tyrannical husband was Firaun. right? And Ustaz also mentioned that we also know the hadith that patience is half of iman, right? So to always make dua to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, right? To give you patience, and to remind yourself that patience is the path to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, right? To hold yourself and to be patient, right? As you take this path to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, right? So Ustaz was mentioning that it is, and it is that for women we don't know the makeup of men, and men don't know the makeup of women. Like we don't know what they're made of and what we are made of, right? So we don't understand. We tend to go, at loggerheads with each other, right? Because we don't understand each other's makeup, right? Or each other's, what we are, what how we're programmed, right? How we're programmed, right? And that leads to a lot of problems. Like she said, honestly, in our zaman, so many women are complaining about their husbands, and they're probably complaining about us as well, right? So it is on us, to really hold yourself and make yourself be patient and understand this that patience is half of iman, and patience is a path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a very fast path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. تمام. السؤال هنا سألت هذه هل عندك النصيحة يعني كيف نقسم أوقاتنا يعني لله تعالى نعبد الله تعالى ومعنا أطفال صغار، يعني خصوصا إذا نريد أن يعني نكثر في قراءة القرآن، وأن نطلب العلم يعني حتى في إنترنت، يعني الآن كثير الدروس يعني في عبر الزوم والإنترنت، ولكن إننا أطفال صغار. يعني كيف نقسم أوقاتنا بين حقوق الأطفال وأيضا الزوج، يعني و يعني حاجاتنا إلى العبادة وخصوصا القرآن. Bismillah. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me? I think Ustazah got cut off. I think so. Her voice disappeared on my end. I thought it was my internet. I think she cut off. I think her internet cut off. But I think I'll answer her question. I'll give you her answer now while waiting for her to come back on. I'm not sure if it's coming back on or not. But well, we are at the end of the session anyway. So she said that, so she said it was a very good question, mashallah. And she said that, basically, to me, for me to summarize the entire answer, right? She mentioned that your time, right, for your own ibadah is before Fajr. Right? So Qiyamul Layl, that's your time, right? So to try your very best to wake up half an hour right before Fajr, and just have your time for Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, right? Especially Quran, because Quran of Fajr, that is oh, so that's back. So that تسمعين.
نعم نعم، الآن كأنه انقطع الخط، الآن رجع.
نعم نعم شفنا الإنترنت قطع. يعني بترجم
نعم
الجواب أولا
تفضل
إن شاء الله.
تفضل.
نعم إن شاء الله. Okay, so Ustazah said, yeah, so her time is before Fajr, and then pray Fajr, and then till sunrise, right? So if she's able, depending on your situation, right, whether you're able to, spend the time from Fajr to sunrise, that will be your um your time for your own worship. Then thereafter, for most of us, our kids go to school, they go to kindergarten, right? They actually go out in the morning, right? Most of us, our kids actually go out, right? So if your kids are those who actually go to school, in the mornings, then you do have the time, right? You do have the time, in the mornings to, take care of the house, I cook for them, and also, do your worship and bring a duha and so on. Right. So then now comes after when they come back. Right. So most of them they come back, in the afternoon at around 4 time they come back. Right. So you pray with them first. So when they're around, I see the answer is that you actually do ibadah together with them. Right. You do the ibadah together. She said pray the word together, the Yobit after the word together, with a Nasr, after the word together, right? And then, have your lunch together, and then do some schoolwork together with them, guide them in their schoolwork, depending on how small your children are, if they need to play with you, then you play with them. It is time, right? Then comes Asr, pray Asr together. I encourage them to be around you. If they're very small, encourage them to be around you, right? And then do Surah Waqi'ah together, right? Even if they're very small, just do it out loud, right? Together Surah Waqi'ah after Asr, so they get used to it, right? And then play, right? Play after Asr. Right? You can go out with them, can go for a walk, you can go for to playground, you can play with them, right? The Asr time is a playtime for them, right? So to spend time, right? So give that time and ask the time, to spend time with them, right? And then comes Maghrib. So Maghrib, again, you play together. Then between Maghrib and Isha, you can try your very best, right? You can listen to a lesson together, right, with them actually. You can put something on and you can actually, be like someone, can explain stuff to them, right? If you can do that, know, on some nights, right? Or you can do Quran with them together, right? This is from here that many colors are all recorded. So if you want to go for recordings, you go for recordings, right? But basically until Aisha. So until Aisha, get them to prayer Aisha and then they go to bed straight away, right? So nothing after Aisha. If you want, if after Aisha for those who are a bit older, if you want to, do more activities with them, read something, do some fiqh classes with them, or do some hadith Quran classes. If you want to just, share with them what they learned today, what you learned today, the kind of thing, to have conversation and bonding with them, right, after Isha, if they are old enough to stay awake after Isha, right? And then thereafter, once they are asleep, you have your time again for yourself, right? After they've gone to sleep, you have your time for yourself again, inshallah. أستاذة بنقف هنا إن شاء الله. الوقت
كما
الآن تأخر.
كما تحبون.
في
كما
سنغافورة
تحبون.
10 الآن. الساعة
تمام.
10 إن شاء الله.
وإذا تريدون عزيزتي فرحانة
إن
يعني
شاء الله،
باقي
يعني هناك
الأسئلة
أسئلة. مم.
ممكن
نعم.
ترسلونها عبر
مم.
الخاص وممكن نرد عليكم، وأنتم بعد ذلك تترجمونها وترسلونها رسائل في الجروب. ما رأيكم لأجل الوقت؟
نعم. نعم. نعم، فكرة جيدة إن شاء الله. يعني أن الأسئلة كثيرة. يعني بعض